Hello everyone, welcome to another seasonal anime discussion video. I do apologize for not doing one of these for last season, but I did not happen to have the time to do so, but I am here for this season, the summer 2016 season, and we'll just get right into it, starting off mostly with sequels, since they're a bit easier to talk about. We'll start with Fate's Kaleid liner Prisma Illya 3 Ray, or Dry, or I still don't know how you're supposed to pronounce that. I don't know if it's supposed to be as it looks, or if you're supposed to say the joke, which is that the 3 is supposed to look like a D, and it's supposed to be dry, which is German for 3. I don't know, but we have the 4th season of Prisma Illya, because we had 2 seasons that were adapted from the two-way or Zwei manga, and this is the from the dry manga or 3-ray manga, whatever. It's the 4th season, even though it has 3 in the title. And this will probably be the only series that I watch for certain as it airs. Mostly because, one, I like to either wait for something to get some reception and feedback before I watch it, or wait and see if it gets licensed or isn't licensed, or if it might get a dub or a broadcast dub, or a number of things. This one, unlike a year ago when I did my first seasonal discussion video where I talked very, very briefly about Two-Way Hurts, the 3rd season, I am now caught up to the show. I wasn't then. Now I am, so there's really no reason for me not to watch it as it's airing. So, yeah. The thing with this show is it's a little bit difficult to recommend for 2 main reasons. The first being that a lot of your enjoyment of it will probably be dependent on certainly having seen something in the Fate series, but probably a good amount of stuff. A lot of the enjoyment is seeing characters that you've seen in other situations, usually darker situations. Not that this is entirely lighthearted, but it certainly has way more lighthearted moments than the other Fate installments. So part of the enjoyment is seeing these characters in different situations that you wouldn't see them in the other universes. But the problem with that is because the only other Fate installment that I'd ever recommend to people would be Fate Zero. And a lot of your enjoyment of this part of it is certainly dependent on having seen Fate Zero, considering Iris Veil is in here, and some other aspects of Fate Zero. But a lot of it is having seen Fate Stay Night, some version of Fate Stay Night. That having seen that and then watching this will be where a lot of your enjoyment will come from. And since I don't really recommend anything from Fate Stay Night, it is difficult to recommend this. The other reason, of course, is the sexualization of underage girls, which I really hope this season cuts down on, because I didn't like it in the other seasons, and I don't want to see it again, but it will probably be there regardless. So, if you like that sort of stuff, good for you. Then I hope you'll enjoy it, but that does make it very difficult to recommend. But if you're able to forgive that later thing and you have seen enough of the Fate series, give it a watch. It's fun for what it is, I would say, but it is difficult to recommend. I will be watching it though, so there we go. Next up, very briefly, I want to mention the 2nd season of Food Wars, only because I haven't seen the 1st season yet, but I do plan to, so that's really all I can say about it. I have no expectations because I haven't seen the 1st season. I do hope it's good, and I do expect it to be fairly well received because the 1st season was. Not that that's universal. There are plenty of times that 2nd seasons will be a lot worse than 1st seasons, but I would think this would be, decently well liked. Probably one of the bigger shows of the season, but I really don't have many thoughts on it. So, moving on again, we come to the, I guess, 2nd season, if you could even call it that, of the 7 Deadly Sins. And the reason I don't know if you can really say that is because it's just 4 episodes. But the thing with the 7 Deadly Sins is I was not a huge fan of the 1st season. It's okay, like 5 out of 10 average, I would say. But it came off as a bit of too much of a generic shonen. The villains weren't well done. Nowhere near enough world building. I didn't care for most of the characters outside of like Bon and I guess King to a little bit of a degree. So I'm gonna watch this simply because I have seen the first season. That's really the only reason. But I really don't care. that's the long and short of it. I don't care, but I'm gonna watch it anyway. I don't really know what this is meant to be. I don't know if these 4 episodes are just gonna be like a way to like readjust the show a bit so they can do a second season later, because my understanding is that the first season, the way it ended, changed some things. I don't know how many things, but some things from the manga. So maybe this is like, okay, now we are going to do a second season, but we can't just continue on because we made changes, so let's have this to like maybe fix that, or maybe, I don't know. I'm just not really sure why this is only 4 episodes, unless there's only enough material out right now to do 4 episodes. Like maybe the next thing that they feel like adapting is a short thing in the manga, and that's why it's only 4 episodes. But I don't know. Again, I don't particularly care, but the first season is fairly highly rated, at least on my anime list. I don't know about other areas of the internet, but I would presume if you like the first season, you'll like this as well, and yeah, I'll watch it at some point, probably when it's put on Netflix. Next up, we have 2 seasons of Danganronpa. 2 simultaneously airing seasons, which is interesting. One, I believe, is adapting the 3rd game, and the other is adapting, I think, a prequel to the 2nd game, if I recall correctly, or something along those lines. I'm not entirely sure, but yeah, Danganronpa's another thing. I didn't care for the first season. I don't think most people did. Usually what I've heard from people is play the game, and I don't really feel like playing the game, so yeah, that's where I'm left with. The first season, like, it's entertaining if you turn your brain off. You know, death games, when they are poorly done, can still be entertaining just to see, oh, who's going to get killed next? You know, who's going to survive? But aside from that, like, I didn't really care for the ending. Not necessarily, like, how it ended, but the way it went about it. Like, what the ultimate point of the show was. You know, the weird focus on, like, despair and everything like that. So, yeah, I didn't care for it. I am going to watch these again because I'm already invested in it. I've already seen the first season, and I don't feel like I can personally judge a show if I haven't seen at least the majority of it. So, same reason why I'm going to watch 7 Deadly Sins, even though, you know, even if I did pass it, I would still have seen the majority. But I want to see all of it, so my opinion can be accurate and up to date. And these seasons, they might even get broadcast dubs from Funimation. They are both licensed by Funimation, just like the first season, so they could, in which case they'll be pretty easy to watch if you happen to want to watch dubs. I do, so that'll probably be the way that I watch it. So yeah, I don't have many thoughts on this. I don't care about it, but I'm going to watch it anyway. That's the long and short of it. What else do we have? We have the new, I guess you could say, season of Berserk. And the reason why I made that little chuckle, the thing with Berserk, it for the longest time was like one of the main poster childs of shows that everyone wanted a continuation to, but nobody expected would happen. I would say, I mean, there's a lot of shows that fall under that category with anime. There's so many shows that, you know, get first seasons and then never get more. But I would say the 3 biggest ones were this, Berserk, Full Metal Panic, and Spice and Wolf. And now, you know, and it wasn't that far apart that they got announced. We have this continuation to Berserk and a continuation or a reboot. I don't think they've confirmed about it, but we're getting a new Full Metal Panic as well. So two of these things that nobody thought would ever happen are happening. And it's really, really weird and exciting and interesting, and it makes me really hope we get that third season of Spice and Wolf. You gotta have the trifecta. You gotta do it. Oh, it makes me so excited, because it's like we could finally get these things that no one thought would ever happen, but are happening. Both of these, I mean, even going back a year ago, the second season of Durarara, nobody expected that to happen. Even a lot of adaptations, like, shows I'll talk about a little bit later, Rewrite and Planetarian, how many people thought those would happen? So many things lately are just happening that seemed, prior to them being announced, so unlikely, and yet they are happening. And it's a really, really exciting time to be an anime fan, I think. But on to the actual show itself. Berserk, the main point to talk about is the animation. The animation is this weird 3D CGI thing. It doesn't look good, but it's what we got. The three Golden Age arc movies that were released recently, but were not done by the same studio, I believe, as this is. But they had like this cross between regular animation and 3D animation, and it looked weird then, not only because it's weird by itself, but it's weird when it's mixed in with 2D as well. But here, even by itself, it looks weird. It's giving me these nightmarish flashbacks to Knights of Sidonia. Knights of Sidonia was not a show I liked, not only because of the animation, because it's a bad show, but yeah, it's one of those things that could drag the show down because it could look really bad. Even if the story is really good, it could hurt how the show is received. Hopefully the story is still good. Simply getting more Berserk is something to be very appreciative for after how many years since the actual original first season aired. That was in 1998 that it ended, so 18 years later we're getting a second season. It's just really, really, really nice to finally get this. It just would have been nicer if it looked as good as it really deserves to, considering how good the manga looks. Not that I've read the manga, but from the scenes that I've seen of it, it looks fantastic. It's really well drawn. And I don't know. It's just... It's a bit of a downer, despite how amazing it is that this is actually happening. It's a bit of a downer that it has to look the way it does. But hopefully the story will be able to still be really great. It won't screw up anywhere. And hopefully it can be, at least to some degree, at least story and character-wise, the show that people have wanted for so long. So, yeah, wow. It's still mind-blowing that this is actually happening. I don't believe there are any other sequels I want to talk about. There are some others coming out, like the second season of Arslan, but I never saw the first season. I don't plan to, so I don't care about that. So let's move on to new shows. Let's start off with Amanchu. How about that? Amanchu, the main reason to watch out for this show is because its original source material was done by the same guy who wrote Aria. And Aria is one of the most well-received slice-of-life shows around. Even people who claim to hate those, any sort of moe, cute girls doing cute things kind of show, they still really love Aria. I don't know why, but they really do. And Aria is able to have this very atmospheric setting to it that really draws you in, which a lot of the really, at least a lot of the slice of life shows that I really like Non Biyori, for example, have been able to do that. They've had this atmosphere that just, it really draws you into what's going on. It makes almost everything that these characters are doing really interesting. Unfortunately, I don't think Aria was anywhere near as consistent as Non Biyori or some other slice of life shows were, but it's still a really good show. It's certainly worth checking out. And hopefully Amanchu will be something similar to that. Now, this does involve water, like Aria did, but in the form of scuba diving. And, I mean, scuba diving is... scuba diving is just... What are you doing? I don't know how interesting that's going to be. I think it's going to depend on how much focus is put on the actual scuba diving, or if it's just an excuse to make the show involve water. But yeah, it's definitely something to keep your eye on, because, I mean, not necessarily to say that if, a creator struck gold once, they'll do it again, but there is a sizable chance they will. So this could turn out to be really good if it's handled right. I mean, this is JC Staff, and adaptation wise, I should say, sometimes they're really good, sometimes it's debatable, sometimes they just adapt bad source material. Animation wise, though, the designs of the characters look a little weird. The animation looks pretty alright, but those character designs look really, really weird. I don't know if that's just JC Staff being JC Staff, or that's how it was in the manga and they couldn't make it look better, I guess. It just didn't adapt well. I don't know, but hopefully it grows on us who watch it. But yeah, keep an eye on this one. It could turn out to be really good. But, as with any slice of life show, it could easily turn out to not be consistent enough to be worthwhile, but hopefully that's not the case. Next up, how about we talk about Sweetness and Lightning? Or, well, the Japanese name is Amanchu Inazuma. But whatever, Sweetness and Lightning, because that's English, and we know what that means. So this is a show about basically a teacher taking care of his little daughter after his wife died. And it involves a lot of cooking as well, because he's not good at cooking, and his daughter has to eat a lot of, like store food, like convenience store food. So he ends up getting involved with this restaurant that the mother of one of his students runs. So that's where they start eating, and it turns into this, the three of them bond, and they cook, and they eat, and it's just a fun time all around. I think the main draw of this is certainly the similarity on the surface to Bunny Drop, which was, if you haven't heard of it, a slice of life show about a guy who, he's single. He's raising a relative of his, who he's basically raising her as his daughter, even though she is not genetically his daughter. But that was a very cute, very heartwarming show about, doing something like that. I could see this being very similar, but I also see this, based on the PV and the animation style, being much more focused on comedy than Bunny Drop ever was. Not that Bunny Drop didn't have comedy, but it was not the central focus by any means. This I could see being much more oriented towards comedy than necessarily trying to raise a daughter by yourself. There's also the cooking aspect, so there could be a lot of, food porn in here, and combine that with Food Wars having another season, and if you're into food porn, you are good to go this season. But, again, something to keep your eye on. It could be really good if it focuses more on trying to raise a child on your own, or it could turn to being sort of meh, depending on how the comedy is, if that ends up being the main focus. So, definitely pay attention to it, but it could screw up, depending on how it's done. As with any show. And as I say pretty frequently when I do these videos, something could turn out to be great, it could turn out to be shit. Depends on how it's adapted. This has potential, so hopefully it goes over well. At least I really hope it does. Briefly, I'll talk about Tales of Zestiria the X. Briefly, because I have not played the games, and I have no intention to, as with most game adaptations like this. But it is done by UFO Table, so at the very least, it will look beautiful. I don't know about the story, though, so, good animation can't always save a crappy story, but it will certainly be noteworthy because of that animation quality. It is licensed by Funimation, so it could get a broadcast dub, so that's another notable thing. But really, the only reason I bring it up is because it could look, it will look, because from the PV, it looks amazing. It will look really, really beautiful. So that's what's noteworthy about that, at least for me. Next up, another show that could be really, really, really well received, and that is Orange. And I'll read the synopsis for this, in case you haven't heard of it, because this show seems to be pretty hyped up, from what I've seen at least. One day, Naho Takamiya receives a letter written to herself from 10 years in the future. As Naho reads on, the letter recites the exact events of the day, including the transfer of a new student into her class named Kakeru Naruse. Now, the Naho from 10 years later repeatedly states that she has many regrets, and she wants to fix these by making sure the Naho from the past can make the right decisions, especially regarding Kakeru. What's more shocking is that she discovers that 10 years later, Kakeru will no longer be with them. Future Naho asks her to watch over him closely. So the premise is already very, very interesting, having that sort of time travel-y aspect. Not really, but sending letters into the past has been done before, but it's still an interesting concept to have. And of course, this will certainly have a lot of drama involved in it, because of trying to figure out why this Kakeru guy isn't with them anymore, trying to become friends with him, trying to... I don't know what the source material involves. I could see this being like he's a really depressed kid, and maybe in the original timeline they weren't as inclined to be friends with him. Not necessarily that her and her group of friends were mean to him, I don't know, but maybe they just didn't help him out, and then he got depressed and killed himself. That could happen, and that could be why he's not there. So this could be maybe trying to prevent him from doing that and trying to be friends with him and making him happy. And that could be very, 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 very well done and very interesting. This also has a romance tag to it, so I presume maybe Naho and Kakeru will be a thing, or maybe he'll end up with some other friend, because she seems to have 2 other female friends. I don't know, but that'll be involved to some degree. But I'm a bit more interested in seeing why exactly Kakeru is not with them in the future, and if it does involve suicide or if it involves something less dramatic. I don't know. That would seem like the obvious route to go, but I don't know, because I haven't read the source material. But, yeah. The only thing I would say to watch out for with this would be if the drama turns into melodrama. Because drama can be very, very enthralling and intriguing if done right, but you do it wrong and it turns into melodrama, and it just becomes like this raw emotion that's thrown at you and you don't care. Sort of like what I felt with F, A Tale of Memories and Melodies. And I apologize to those who really like that show, but I didn't. It was way too melodramatic for me. And I hope this doesn't end up like that. Or like other shows that I thought were too melodramatic. Not just that show, but... yeah, the premise is very interesting, and I hope it goes down an interesting route, like what I suggested. Or that it has its own very interesting idea in mind, but it's something to watch out for. I think this could be one of the bigger shows this season, certainly. Moving on, we have 91 Days. So, this show is done by Studio Shuka, who most notably have done the second season of Durarara, and that is basically the only thing they have done other than this and the upcoming 5th season of Natsume's Book of Friends, which, by the way, I'm really looking forward to that. If and when I do a fall video, that is definitely going to be talked about. Oh, Natsume's Book of Friends is so good. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about 91 Days. So Shuka basically is doing a lot of things that Brainspace used to do. Because they did the first season of Durarara, they did the prior seasons of Natsume's Book of Friends, and they also did Baccano. And this show is one that a lot of people are comparing to Baccano because of the setting. It is Prohibition America, so around the same time as Baccano, because Baccano was 1930, 31, 32, and 33? Or 30, 31, 32, something like that. Early 1930s, over 3 years. So yeah, Prohibition era. So that was right around the end of Prohibition, 1933. But so this is sometime between 1920 and 1920 or 1933. But that already creates a very interesting setting. It is in the U.S., obviously, because of Prohibition. And style-wise, animation-wise, it does look very similar to Baccano. And I'll read the synopsis just to provide a better idea. During Prohibition, the law held no power, and the mafia ruled the town. The story takes place in Lawless. Rather fitting name, isn't it? A town thriving on black market sales of illicitly brewed liquor. Avilio returns to Lawless after some time away, following the murder of his family in a mafia dispute there. One day, Avilio receives a letter from a mysterious sender, prompting him to return to Lawless for revenge. He then infiltrates the Vanetti, probably. That's probably how it would be pronounced. Family, the ones responsible for his family's murder, and sets about befriending the Don's son, Nero, to set his vengeance in motion. Killing brings more killing, and revenge spawns more revenge. How will the 91-day story of these men, guided by a tragic fate, end? So that could be really cool. Having that revenge aspect certainly will make the story more interesting, and more likely than not, our hero is going to be very anti-hero-like, just based on this setting. I have to wonder if this is going to have maybe some mind games. I mean, not that it's necessarily going to be like Avilio versus Nero, or like how Death Note had Light versus L or anything like that. But you could see Avilio trying to, use mind games and deception to try and trick the Vanetti family into letting him in and becoming friends with Nero and having him get close. It could be pretty interesting if it goes down that route. This is original. It's not adapted from anything, unlike Baccano and Durarara were. So, nothing to really base it on. But it does look very promising. I'm sure a lot of people out there are kind of wondering why they didn't just do a second season of Baccano. Though, as someone who is pretty content with how Baccano ended, I'm fine with this. Having sort of like a spiritual successor instead of an actual sequel. Plus, I don't really think the light novels after what was adapted sold too well in Japan. I think that's like the actual reason why there isn't more. But, maybe they will do more. Obviously, we're getting a new season of Berserk, so a second season of Baccano is certainly not out of the question. So maybe if this does well, they will eventually do that. So hopefully this will tide people over until that hypothetically happens. But this should be fun. This should definitely scratch that itch of yours if you've been wanting more Baccano or more of something along those lines, basically. So, yeah, definitely keep an eye on that one. Next up, we have Mob Psycho 100, which is done by the same original creator who made One Punch Man, otherwise known as One. And this has 100 in it, so maybe the next one will be something 1000 or 1000 Kick Dude. There we go, that's a new idea. 1000 Kick Dude. I want that to be made right now. So, this show is... I think your enjoyment of it is going to very much depend on if you really enjoyed One Punch Man or not, because it's probably going to be more of the same. It certainly has the same art style, even though it's done by a different studio. It's done by Bones. But obviously, the mangas were the same, so same guy, so obviously it's going to look somewhat similar. And yeah, I mean, I think that's going to be the long and short of it. Did you like One Punch Man? Yes, you'll like this. Did you not? Maybe give this one a pass. But synopsis-wise, we have Shigeo Kageyama, aka Mob, is an 8th grader with psychic abilities. Wow, that is so surprising. I never would have guessed from the title. Okay. He could bend spoons and lift objects with his mind from a young age, but he slowly began to withhold from using his abilities in public due to the negative attention he kept receiving. Now the only thing he wants is to become friends with a girl in his class, Tsubomi, but with his psychic mentor, who has no psychic powers, so why is he a mentor? I guess that's why it's in quotes. He continues his daily life attempting to realize his purpose in life. So I'm guessing it'll mostly be him, struggling to keep his powers under wraps while trying to get with this girl. And maybe he'll have to decide to use his powers again, depending on the situation. I wouldn't be surprised if he had to save this girl from, like, some crazy dude with some other sort of power or with psychic powers himself or herself, and have to defeat them and save her and stuff like that. So I don't know. I don't know if the story is really going to matter too much. I think it's just going to be, is it entertaining? Is the action good? And if it is, it'll probably do well. Again, probably one of the bigger shows from this season, simply because it has that reputation or that hype from One Punch Man. So yeah, that's probably how you gotta look at it. Did you like One Punch Man or did you not? And go from there. Alright, so we're nearing the end of this. I know I kind of rushed through this, but a lot of the shows that I wanted to talk about were sequels, and I really didn't have too much to say for those. So, last few things I want to talk about. We have a double dose of Ki this season with Rewrite and Planetarian. And on the surface, I want to get so hyped up for these shows because it's Ki. And if you remember my video from a year ago when I talked about Charlotte, which I still haven't seen, but I will once the dub comes out, which should be soon. But I have heard mixed opinions, so that's unfortunate. But as you know, I really, really, really get excited when something new from Ki gets announced. I adored Canon. I adored Clannad. I liked the movie adaptation of Air, even if I didn't care for the series. I have seen Little Busters. I hadn't seen it when I did the video a year ago, but I have seen it now. I didn't care for it, unfortunately. I don't want to get into that, but I didn't care for it. Angel Beats is enjoyable, but very flawed. That seems to be the same thing that Charlotte has going for it, and a lot of that has to do with both of them and Air as well, you could throw in, being only 12 to 13 episodes. And the problem with that is that's usually not enough time to actually make a story like this work. Even in the case of original works, because Angel Beats and Charlotte were original works. Air wasn't, so that had the issue of being too short and not making you give a crap about the main sort of story and having it just kind of thrown at you. So that was my main issue with Air. That was kind of convoluted, and I didn't really give a crap about the main payoff, as it were, whereas the movie has a better payoff because it's not as accurate. It takes a lot of liberties. So the thing is, when it's that short, you don't have a lot of time to make things work. And Rewrite, unfortunately, is also only 13 episodes. Now, the reason it might work out, and actually it's 13 episodes, but the first one is an hour long, so that's nice. It's technically 14 in that sense. But the thing is, first of all, it's being done by 8-Bit. And if you don't know 8-Bit, if you don't know that studio, good for you, because they have done some not so well received things. Most specifically, or the most relevant thing to this is Grisaya, or Grisia, or I've heard it pronounced a few ways. I'm going with Grisaya, which had 2 seasons and an hour-long special in between. It adapted 3 visual novels, actually. and it was rushed to all hell. It was not good. It really wasn't. The first season, which actually, that was the more traditional visual novel one where there's the 5 heroines and the guy helps them. That was only 13 episodes. And you can't do 5 heroine story arcs in 13 episodes. This is how the first season of Grisaia went. 3 episodes to set things up. Okay, perfectly fine. Then the first heroine, Michiru, got 2 episodes, which is nowhere near enough. Then the black-haired girl, whose name I don't remember because I don't care about the characters, she only had 1 episode. Then the maid only had 1 episode. And then we had the little lolly who wanted to be the main character's daughter for some reason. She had 2 episodes. And then the last 4 were Amane. And Amane's arc was the only decent one because it was the only one who had a decent number of episodes. Because you can't do a story arc, at least you can't do a good story arc in 3 episodes or 2 episodes, or God forbid 1 episode, but 2 of them were done in 1 episode and the other 2 were done in 2, and you can't make a good story that way. It's the same issue Little Busters had. Even though Little Busters had 26 episodes for its first season, all of the characters, they didn't even do all the heroines in the first season, but the 4 of the 6 that they did, they only got 3 episodes for each one. That's not enough. It's nowhere near enough to make a good story arc or to make me give a crap about these characters. So when you make one where you give them less than that? No, it's not going to work. It's going to be terrible. It's going to be nonsensical. So that's the first concern, because 8-Bit does not have a good track record. And, the animation will probably be fine, because I didn't think Grisaia looked bad or anything, but adaptation-wise, it's something to be concerned about, to say the least. Now, the reason it might not be too bad is because this is apparently adapting a route that wasn't... Well, it's not even really adapting. It's a route that wasn't in the visual novel. And that is interesting. Like, it's dealing with a girl who was in the visual novel, and I think Rewrite has like 6 or 7 heroines, but it's dealing with a character who had some sort of main role in the visual novel, because as you can probably tell, I haven't played the visual novel, I don't know, but didn't get her own arc, didn't get her own route. So that could actually be really cool, and that could work out, because and they've said that they are going to have the other girls get some sort of focus in this show, this adaptation. I don't know if that means they're just going to be around, or if they're actually going to get arcs. If they actually get arcs, and you're trying to do like 6, 7, 8 girls in a 13-episode show, it's going to be shit. It's going to be absolute shit. But if they're just around, helping out, and we have 13 episodes that are basically just this one girl, that could be really good. Even if it's a terrible adaptation, it could still be a good anime. Now, of course, that would make me, and a lot of other people who haven't played the visual novel, think, well, I'm missing out on a lot of stuff now, because all these other girls are just around, and they're not getting, their own routes. They're not getting major focus, so I don't care about them. I only care about this one girl. And that certainly would be kind of disappointing, and would probably encourage a lot of people to play the visual novel. But it could still be a good show if we get a lot of focus, and if it's well done for this one girl. Because 13 episodes, if the majority of that is for her route, you could get a really damn good route with that. Though obviously there's probably going to be some episodes to like set things up, maybe like 3 or 4. But if we have like 8, 9, 10 episodes about this one girl, that could be really good. But I don't know. As an adaptation, this is probably going to be terrible. But as its own thing, as maybe like supplemental material, it could be really good. But it certainly will probably, regardless, make people feel like, well, I'm not getting a good feel for what the visual novel was like. And this was an adaptation that a lot of people didn't think would happen, mostly because, from what I understand, Rewrite is the sort of visual novel that's very difficult to adapt, because, 1, because of how many routes there are, and 2, because apparently a number of the routes end in ways that you couldn't, like, string them all together into one story, which is what a lot of visual novel adaptations try and do. Figure out who the main heroine is, have the main character end up with that main heroine at the very end, but have him go through every arc in a single linear fashion and have him just end up being friends with those characters. And, if these arcs end in ways that don't allow that, you can't really do it unless you have a really good writer who's able to change things and add things in that makes it work while still feeling like it's good and makes sense and isn't contradicting itself. Obviously, this is not going that route, or if it is, it's going to be terrible and rushed at only 13 episodes. But, that's the thing. I'm really excited because it's key, but I'm also really, really unsure what to actually feel. After that initial excitement, once you sober up and you realize, oh God, what could this turn out to be? You start to remember, like, I'm thinking back, well, this could be rushed like Angel Beats, it could be rushed like Air, it could be rushed like what people are saying Charlotte was, it could be rushed like Grisaya was, even if that's not key, that was 8-bit. So, I don't know, I want to be excited, and it could turn out to be very good on its own, but it probably won't be as good as it probably should be. And that is disappointing, but thankfully, this is not the only key adaptation we have this season. Moving away from TV series now and going into ONAs, I believe we have Planetarian. Now, this is actually, it's an ONA and it's getting a movie afterwards, though I think the movie is, I don't think that's actually, okay, no, it's adapting a side story from the visual novel. I thought it was going to be original, but it's a side story. But, yeah, so it's getting, it's not confirmed how many episodes it's going to be, but it's getting an ONA, and it's getting a movie. Planetarian being in this format and being short actually might work out. And that's because, again, as I understand, the Planetarian visual novel is not only very short, but it's also one that doesn't have you actually making any decisions. It's just one where you go through and you read the story. You're not actually deciding, okay, I want to go this way, I want to do that, I want to have this character be my heroine. It's just, this is the story, and go read it. That is my understanding of it. And in that case, that works in a short format. I remember before this was announced and people were thinking, could this ever happen? Because this is an old visual novel. This was, I think this came out in 2004? 2004, 2005, somewhere around there. So it's over 10 years old. And a lot of people didn't think it would happen, but if it did happen, people were thinking it would either be OVAs or a movie. Now we're getting an ONA and a movie, so kind of both. But this could actually work out because it seems better fit for this sort of short format. And the PV looks pretty cool. It looks well animated. It looks like it'll be enjoyable. It'll probably be slightly different from what Key normally does, because if it's not having you make decisions, and I don't believe there are multiple heroines, I think it's just the one girl, then, it's going to be very different, but it could still be really good and really likable, and I hope it will, and I hope it's adapted well, because I want one of these two Key adaptations to be good. I want another Key show that makes me feel like how Canon and Clannad made me feel, and not feel disappointed like Little Busters made me feel, or like the Air TV adaptation made me feel. I want to feel sucked into this universe. I want to feel what I felt from other Key shows that were really good. And I hope that between the two, one of them will make me feel that way. One of them will suck me in. One of them will make me really fall in love with it. And that they won't both be crap, basically. So, because I'm expecting Rewrite to not be so great, I'm counting on you, Planetarian. Be something really good. Please, for the love of God, be something good. Alright, so moving on to other things. OVAs. The last Kami-sama Kiss OVA is coming out, so that's a thing. There's some Food Wars OVAs. Non Biyori OVA, which is really, really cool. Again, Non Biyori was my favorite. Non Biyori Repeat specifically was my favorite thing that came out last season, as I expected it to be. I absolutely adore Non Biyori. Getting an OVA is fantastic. I wish it were a third season, but hey, anything's better than nothing. Maybe we'll get a third season announced afterwards, but that is something to definitely look forward to. That's mostly it for those sorts of things. There is a Durarara special OVA, and it's like a... I don't even know. It's called Dufufufu. Dufufufu. It's, I don't know. A fake Shizuo is going to cause some chaos, so that'll be a thing. There's a special for Dimension W. So, if you saw those shows, there's those things. Nothing really to talk about, but they exist. But going on to movies, there are two things I want to talk about. We have the second Kizumonogatari entry, which is Neketsuhen, and I haven't seen the first entry. I do still plan to, most certainly, but I haven't seen it yet, so I can't talk on this, but hopefully it'll be good. The more pressing thing I want to talk about for movies, and the final thing I'll be talking about for this video, is Accel World Infinite Burst, and... Alright, so... let me get some background information out here. I really, really like Accel World. I know a lot of people don't, seemingly because they don't like that the main character is fat, which is a really, really shitty reason to not like a show. But whatever. I'm sure there are plenty of people who have other reasons, but that is the reason I see most commonly, and that is a terrible reason to not like a show. But, yeah, I really like Accel World. But its biggest problem is that it doesn't have a second season. And when this was first announced back in October, and when I got really hyped up for it, what did we all think it was? A second season. What did it turn out to be? A fucking movie. And what's even worse, this movie, at least if I recall correctly, I do remember reading this, is set after the light novels. Like, not that the light novels are over, they're not, but it's set after whatever light novel he had written when he made this, or... the most current one. I don't know, but it's going to require you to, most likely require you to have seen or read the light novels up to that point. And I haven't. I know some stuff that happens in it, because I've looked into it, but I have not read it, and most anime fans are not going to like that, because they want something that is a sequel from what they last saw, not something that's going to require them to have seen something else to enjoy this. I don't know if that, maybe what I read was wrong about that. I don't know. But, or maybe it won't even require you to have read the light novels. Maybe even if it's set afterwards, it won't reference that stuff as much. I don't know. This is technically anime original, though, because it's not adapted from anything that currently exists in the light novels. And it will have characters that, new characters that aren't in the light novel. But, I don't know. It's just really fucking disappointing. After I got so hyped up, thinking we were going to get a second season. Not only is this just a movie, but it's potentially one that won't make sense to anime-only viewers. And that is really, really annoying. The trailer for it, which I watched, I don't know if they came out with subs for it, but I watched it raw the other day, and like it looks cool. I don't know what they're saying. A lot of it just looks like the characters fighting something. I don't know what, just fighting things. But it looks cool. It looks like more Accel World, and I want more Accel World. And I am very, very, very grateful that we have anything more for it. But, god damn, I really wish this was a second season. And, maybe we'll get lucky. And as soon as this is over, they'll announce a second season. And I'll be happy, and we'll all be good to go. But if it's not, and if it ends up being this thing that requires you to have read the light novels for it to make sense, it is going to be disappointing as all hell. And I'll still be grateful we have anything, but it is... it's just still going to be really annoying. But, on that note, on that not so positive note, that's it. That's all that is currently interesting me. That doesn't necessarily mean that there couldn't be something else that shows up that surprises me. Real life could easily do that, but the premise of that makes me kind of wary, so I'm not talking about it. But yeah, that is my thoughts. Those are my thoughts on the upcoming season. Hopefully it'll turn out to be really good. It has a lot of potential. There are a lot of noteworthy things to talk about. But as with any season, it's going to depend on how well it's written, how well things are carried across, how well drama is carried across, how consistent slice of life shows are, how good animation quality is, and things like that. Hopefully it'll turn out for the best, but it is always best to go in kind of expecting the worst and then have the best happen instead of get your hopes up too high and get overtaken by hype and then be let down. I've already been let down a little bit so far, and these things haven't even aired yet, so I don't want that to happen anymore. But there you go. Thank you for listening to me ramble for nearly an hour. Hopefully I can get back to making these regularly. Hopefully I can get back to making other videos, since when was the last time I did a review? July of last year? My God. But yeah, I need to get some motivation back. But anyway, thanks for listening. Drop a comment if you feel like you want to about what you're looking forward to or what you thought about what I said. And have a great summer. Take care.